If you're battling away trying to lose fat, build muscle, or optimize your hormones and metabolism, and it's just not working for you, despite seemingly doing everything right, you might be overlooking one crucial factor, and it lies in our innermost sanctum, the bedroom. In this episode, I reveal what you are doing in the bedroom that could be sabotaging your fitness goals and how some simple but surprising tweaks can unlock your body's full potential without changing how you eat or work out. Wits and Weights community, welcome to another solo episode of the Wits and Weights podcast. In our last episode 177, How Anatomy Impacts Your Gut, Muscle Mass, Hormones, and Health with Justin Cottle, Justin shared some pretty fascinating information about anatomy and how our digestive system can lead to better nutrient absorption and overall health, and also how our bodies physically adapt to training. We explored the impacts of anatomical knowledge on your personal health and fitness strategies to optimize your nutrition and training. Today for episode 178, doing this in the bedroom is killing your fat loss, muscle growth, hormones, and metabolism. We're tackling a crucial but often overlooked aspect of your health and fitness journey, something you do in the bedroom probably every single night. Adults do it, kids do it, and it's not just on the Discovery Channel. That's right, I'm talking about sleep. It is not a sexy topic in most circumstances, but it is extremely important. And you've probably heard most of the generic sleep tips like get 7 to 9 hours, or you've heard claims about sleep hacks that will transform your life. Do this one thing and you're going to get massively improved sleep. But I want to go beyond those cliches, even though we're going to have some probably common recommendations here, as well as some surprising ones. And we want to explore the evidence on how sleep impacts your physique, your body composition, and the goals that you have for those, including especially their impact on fat loss and muscle gain, both sides of the equation. Because the question is always, can we out-train or can we out-diet poor sleep, right? Some people think, hey, I'm just a 5-hour guy type of person, no big deal. But is that true? How much does sleep really move the needle compared to nutrition and training? You know, what strategies actually work to improve sleep quality and quantity, but especially quality for, busy, ambitious people like you listening to this show that may not have a lot of time. You're trying to get a lot done and you still want to get the quality Z's. And so we're going to answer some of these and get into some more side topics throughout this conversation of one, but conversation with you, my dear listener. So before we dive in, I've put together, what else? A totally free guide called Better Sleep, Better Body that has all of the choice cuts from today's episode. Simply head over to witsandweights.com/free or click the link in the show notes. And by the way, if you go to witsandweights.com/free, you're going to see a ton of guides now. So if you missed some in the past, go check that out, because even if you don't want the one on sleep, there are plenty others there to check out. Now, inside the Better Sleep, Better Body guide, you're going to find the evidence-based strategies and specific lists of tips to optimize sleep habits for improved quality, where it most optimally impacts your metabolism, your hormones, your body composition. All right, so download the Better Sleep, Better Body guide at the link in the show notes or head over to witsandweights.com/free. All right, let's get into today's topic. Doing this in the bedroom, and you know what it is now, is killing your fat loss, muscle growth, hormones, and metabolism. Starting with the science of sleep, right? Before we get into the impact of it, we have to understand what's actually happening in your body when you sleep. So when you sleep, you are cycling between two main stages, REM and non-REM. REM stands for rapid eye movement, and of course, non-REM is everything else. And non-REM is further divided into 3 substages. Non-REM takes up about 75 to 80% of your total sleep time. And then in the deepest non-REM stages, that is when your body releases anabolic hormones like growth hormone and testosterone that we love for muscle protein synthesis and recovery from training. So right off the bat, I want to make that connection in your head that the body needs to get to these deeper quality phases for a long enough time to really trigger a lot of that recovery that you get between your training bouts. This is huge. This is huge. Now, your body also does a lot of other restorative processes during non-REM, like clearing out your metabolic waste products from the brain. Now, the other 20 to 25% of sleep is REM, and this is what we know as the vivid dream state, right? REM is important for learning, for consolidating your memories, emotional regulation, And then over the course of the night, you're going to cycle through both of these, through the non-REM and the REM, multiple times. And non-REM is going to dominate the first half of the night, and REM ramps up in the second half. And again, we can see why duration and quantity is also important. And for some of you who have an Oura ring like I do, you can get all geeky about this and actually see which phases you're in throughout the night. It's pretty good at detecting that based on a variety of factors. One of those, I think, is heart rate, and another might be body temperature, HRV, things like that. But regardless, whether you track it or not, it's the lifestyle actions that improve it that we care about. So both of those stages, REM and non-REM, are definitely essential together for waking up feeling refreshed, right? Mentally refreshed and physically refreshed. And already you can see how sleep deprivation could undermine your effort by impairing things like muscle recovery and growth and cognitive function. So they're all important. And now we're going to take a little bit closer look at the fat loss side of the equation, right? I know a lot of you are working toward losing fat. You're wondering how sleep fits into that equation. You hear me talk about it a lot. And the connection between sleep and weight and fat loss is very robust at this point. I can't bring someone on the show and talk about sleep without getting into some study that supports this. You know, studies show that sleeping less than 7 hours per night is associated with higher BMI, higher obesity rates. In controlled trials where they restrict sleep, people consistently gain weight over a few weeks when their sleep is restricted. And you might be thinking, well, what isn't it just about calories? Well, it is, but sleep is affecting your ability to burn calories and burn fat. So let's talk about that so we understand what's happening, because a lack of sleep is like the worst perfect storm of metabolic and hormonal disruption you can imagine, of almost all the things you can do besides chronic stress, but they tend to go hand in hand, right? So one thing that a lack of sleep does, it dysregulates your appetite hormones. It increases ghrelin, which stimulates hunger, and it decreases leptin, which helps you feel full. So it's both in the wrong direction. And so the result is you feel hungrier. You want to snack more. You get more cravings. And we've seen in studies people consume around 300 to 500 extra calories per day when sleep deprived and when they're not, tracking or deliberately trying to control calories, just eating intuitively, what they call ad libitum, just whatever you want to eat. They tend to eat quite a bit more. And that's a lot, right? That's like an extra pound a week. Lack of sleep also impairs glucose metabolism and insulin sensitivity, right? And so that means potentially, say, more of the carbs you eat get stored as fat rather than going toward muscle. So it affects body composition. It also spikes cortisol, the stress hormone. We know that a lack of sleep simply disrupts your circadian rhythm, and that further encourages fat storage, especially around the midsection. So belly fat, belly fat, belly fat. Big thing here. Besides alcohol, sleep is probably the other huge disruptor and what causes you to store it around the midsection because of that cortisol spike and your body wanting to hoard energy reserves in that area. It also, a lack of sleep, tanks your testosterone by up to 10 to 15%. And since testosterone, as we know, helps maintain muscle mass, it keeps body fat in check. This is like a double whammy. And then lastly, it increases inflammatory markers, inflammation. And emerging research shows that this can be an independent risk factor, of course, for weight gain over time. So nothing good from lacking sleep or sleep quality. And I mentioned that, on top of the biological or the physiological challenges that come from it, the deprivation in sleep just makes it harder to control food cravings and then make the choices you want to make, right? It ramps up things like emotional eating. It diminishes your willpower. You might reach for some quick energy because you need it because of the lack of sleep. So you're going to go for high sugar, high fat types of foods, right? Processed foods. You're more likely to overeat in the evening, and then that can disrupt your sleep further. And now you've got this vicious cycle. You might drink more caffeine and drink it more later in the day because you feel a lack of energy. You see where this is all going. Now, these are short-term changes, and they don't guarantee that you're not going to be able to lose weight long-term or fat or that you're going to gain weight long-term if you're doing other things, but they make it a lot harder. They stack the deck against you. They make fat loss feel harder than it needs to be. One study found that when dieters got a full night's sleep, more than half the weight they lost was fat. When they cut back to restricted time, which about 5.5 hours per night, fat loss dropped by 55%, and they lost more lean mass. And there was a recent review in Dr. Bill Campbell's research review about I'm not sure if I don't think it was the same study, but it's the same kind of result. Body composition worsens when you don't get enough sleep. Other studies have shown higher protein intake is less protective against muscle loss during a deficit if you don't have as much sleep. So, ladies and gentlemen, you're just hurting yourself and making it a lot harder. This is why I titled the episode what I did. This thing in the bedroom, a lack of sleep is killing all of these things. So the takeaway here, which is a good thing to know because then it gives us the power back, it gives us the control, is that skimping on sleep erodes the effectiveness of the other things you're doing, especially your diet. And no matter how much you want to calorie cut and make these food choices and apply willpower, it's not going to fully compensate for your body's fighting against you like this. And so what do we need to do? Well, at minimum, there's a quantity aspect, right? We talk about the 7 to 9 hours of sleep. There is a validity to that range. So if you can get 8, if you get 9, especially during aggressive dieting phases, aggressive fat loss phases, you're going to buffer some of the metabolic adaptations going on. You can't stop metabolic adaptation, but you can avoid making it worse by losing sleep, right? It's a non-negotiable if you want not only success with your fat loss, but to make it feel easier and to make it more sustainable over the long term. So that's sleep and fat loss. It's pretty clear. Just wanted to reiterate those things for you. Let's talk about sleep and muscle gain, right? Because we have a lot of dedicated lifters in the audience, and you're working hard to build your strength and muscle. You're going to the gym consistently 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week. You're crushing it. You're eating. You're in a surplus. But are you recovering enough? And you might think, well, if I'm eating all this food, do I really even need as much sleep? Yes, the science suggests that sleep is just as vital for muscle growth during a gaining phase as your training and nutrition, which is something I've had to get my arms around as well, because you would think, okay, I'm not working against myself on the dieting department. I've got plenty of energy coming in. So is sleep really as important? Well, do you remember those anabolic hormones I mentioned that surge during deep sleep? Growth hormone increases by up to 400% compared to waking levels. IGF-1, testosterone, prolactin, they all rise during deep sleep, not just sleep in general. You have to get to that deep state of sleep. And of course, these hormones, we pretty much know that they are tied to muscle protein synthesis, to satellite cell proliferation, right? Drivers of hypertrophy, drivers of muscle mass. And then on the flip side, if you just don't have enough sleep, you're going to tank those things. You're going to tank your testosterone and your growth hormone. And there's been research on athletes that show when participants are sleep deprived, again, we're talking like 5.5, 5, even 4.5 hours of sleep is usually where they study these things. Their gains in muscle and strength drop compared to people getting a full 8 hours of sleep, even when they're consuming plenty of protein. And it's probably due to this impaired anabolic signaling. So we could see the detriment on both sides of the equation. We see that it both makes fat loss harder, but it also makes muscle growth harder. All right. Now, there's another aspect of sleep that I think is important to mention, and that is skill acquisition and performance. If you're doing a sport, a technical sport, or let's just be honest, having your brains, your wits, right? Your wits about you doing anything, including just lifting weights, you want to be able to focus and use proper form and apply and learn that skill and grow. And then you want to be on for the rest of the day. You don't want to be just tanking later on in the day. And there have been studies on athletes like tennis players, rowers, lifters, that find that when they can extend their sleep, even if it's through napping, it boosts their reaction time, their accuracy, their speed, their power. There was an experiment in 2007, Corman et al., and it had volunteers practice a thumb movement task, and half of them stayed awake after the task, and the other half took a 90-minute nap. And then when they were retested that evening, the people who napped performed 18% faster and maintained their accuracy. And those who were sleep deprived saw a significant decline in speed and accuracy. So this is motor memory, right? This is the neurological patterns that are formed while we're practicing a skill, which is something we do during lifting as well. And sleep helps that. And scientists believe that during REM sleep, your brain replays the neural activity from practicing the new skill. It's kind of like, when you sleep on it, and you all of a sudden have a bright idea immediately the next day, like a problem that you had difficulty solving the day before becomes easier all of a sudden now that you've slept on it. Well, if you lifted, let's say, a brand new movement, you did a new type of squat, and you go to sleep and now you get enough deep REM sleep, or you get the REM sleep, your brain gets to continue to wire and play that pattern that you just did, that movement pattern. And then the neural connections in your brain are stronger. And then overnight, those memories are transferred from short-term storage in the hippocampus to long-term storage in the cortex in something called systems consolidation. So cool. Like, this is when we talk about neuromuscular adaptation and muscle memory. This is the biology behind it. I think it's fascinating. I hope I'm not putting you to sleep. Ha ha. All right. So the application to strength training are obvious. I hope I've made them obvious, right? If you want to lock in the movement patterns and the mind-muscle connection from your workouts, getting sufficient REM sleep is key. If you don't, you're not just compromising muscle growth, but you're probably compromising your technique and strength gains, and then your form and potentially increasing your chance of injury. So it's not just that you're tired and sluggish and that's why you fail to perform. It's also that your brain just doesn't have the cognitive energy that it needs from the sleep. So if you want to build muscle, listen to me. If you want to get strong, build muscle, perform in the gym, actually make gains, and you're finding you're not, are you simply not getting enough sleep? Are you getting, 6 hours of sleep every night instead of 7 or 8, or not getting that quality sleep? Don't be afraid to sneak in naps if you want to get some more recovery and performance. Naps can work for a lot of people. Some people don't like them. Some people don't respond, or some people get more tired when they nap, but it's definitely a lever that you can pull, right? And again, you're not going to suffer from a couple nights of disrupted sleep. We're talking about chronic sleep debt. Just think about it. You're like always behind on sleep, and then that's going to stop all of these processes. So we've talked about fat loss. We've talked about muscle gain. Now I want to talk about sleep and health overall, right? This tends to be, again, the less sexy topic, but it's critically important. Many of you listening are in the older crowd, right? I'm in my 40s. Many of you listening are at least in your 30s, 40s, and beyond. And health becomes more and more important, and it's tied into all of this, because even the most impressive physique is worthless if you don't have the health and if you don't have the vitality and the longevity to enjoy it, right? And sleep is massive in this area for both acute functioning, day to day, but also long-term health. So let's look at the short and long term. In the short term, a single night of poor sleep can tank your mood. It can demotivate you, right? You have less motivation. It can increase your feelings of stress, of anxiety, of irritability. It impairs your focus. It impairs your productivity, your decision making. It induces a state of almost like having a beer or two, like a mild state of intoxication when you don't have enough sleep. You know what I'm talking about. It's like you're hungover and you didn't have anything to drink. Well, what is going on? It suppresses your immune system. Oh, we know this. Like when you're sick, you've got to get your rest. Well, similarly, when you're not sick and you don't get enough sleep, you open up yourself to viruses dramatically. This is a biological thing that actually happens. It increases perceptions of pain. It increases symptoms of chronic conditions that you might have. Just the sky's the limit on that, right? Autoimmune conditions you might have, anything that gives you certain symptoms, it might increase those. And I know how this is. I've got like a torn labrum in my hip. I've had it for quite a few years. And if I sit too long, it'll activate it. And if I'm tired, it'll feel worse, right? If I'm not training or if I'm tired, it's going to feel worse. And you probably have something like that where you don't get enough sleep, you feel it in other areas. A lack of one night of sleep can disrupt your hunger hormones. So remember that we talked about with the fat loss section. It happens immediately. It disrupts your hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin, and then you can get cravings. You start overeat, even in one day. Now, one day is not going to throw off your plans, of course, but just know that can be a result of it. And when you have a particularly difficult week where you feel like you've succumbed to cravings, for example, evaluate the biofeedback and other factors that are associated with that. Like, did you simply lose out on your normal quality sleep? Were you more stressed? Things like that. And then a lack of sleep in one day can spike your blood pressure, and it can actually throw off your blood sugar control just a bit. Okay, we know these things. Now that's just one night. Now let's string these together. You get some chronic sleep deprivation, multiple nights of insufficient sleep, and everything gets compounded. The cognitive performance deteriorates, right? Some studies show that a few weeks in a row of like 6 hours a night reduces performance to the same level as if you had 48 straight hours of no sleep, right? And I honestly, personally, I can attest to that. I've had situations where several nights in a row, I just had poor sleep. I don't think I've gone 2 weeks with less than 6 hours, but I've definitely gone several days with like 5.5 hours of sleep, and it just really builds, and you just constantly feel like you're behind. It's not good. Also, this is really important, okay? Risk of heart attack and stroke go up when you're chronically sleep deprived. One study found that 5 hours a night increased the risk of cardiovascular disease by 200 to 300% compared to 7 hours. Markers of systemic inflammation increase, and that's a known risk factor for chronic diseases like diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's. And even vaccine effectiveness diminishes, where people who have sleep deprivation produce fewer antibodies from a vaccine they got. So if you do the flu vaccine every year, but you don't get enough sleep, that could actually reduce the effectiveness of it. Fascinating stuff. Okay, some of this I'm surprised by as I researched for this episode. Now, perhaps most disturbing of all of this is evidence that shows chronic sleep deprivation literally speeds up aging at the basic biological level with telomeres. Now, I know there's some quackery out there when it comes to longevity research, and we talk about telomeres. Telomeres are those protective caps on the ends of your DNA, and they shorten as you age. And apparently they shorten more quickly in people who consistently get less sleep, and it's dose dependent, which can then potentially reduce your life expectancy. All right. Just take that with a grain of salt. It's not like you needed to know that fact to worry you yet again. We know sleep deprivation is just not good all around. All right. Now, I alluded at the very beginning of the episode to people who are like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night. I'm a low quantity sleeper, right? I've said that about myself. Like, I can get by fine on 5 to 6 hours a night. I don't need more than that. But one thing I want to say about that is how you feel isn't necessarily the best barometer for health and function. And I mean that as in like a general, okay, I'm fine, because we're really good. We're frighteningly good at adapting to chronic stress, to chronic sleep loss, to bad things in our life. We're just good at adapting to them. We're resilient as human beings. And then we don't perceive how impaired we are by relative comparison. Meaning if you all of a sudden did get more sleep and did have less stress, you probably would find you feel so much better, right? That's the key. And I see this with hormones as well, where women or men even, feel a certain way and they're like, yeah, I'm fine. And then all of a sudden we resolve some underlying issue. We start strength training and eating more food and walking more. And all of a sudden you feel great. And you're like, what happened? Well, it's because I regulated my hormones. All right. So one more thing about that is that people in research settings who insist that they've acclimated to shorter sleep, they perform equally as poorly on cognitive tests as people who admit they're exhausted. So there's a massive perception, gap here. So don't assume that you're okay just because you quote unquote feel okay, when you probably would actually feel much better and perform better with more sleep. So if you short yourself on sleep, it's like doing a minimum effective dose. It's not a minimum effective dose. It's like making minimum payments on your debt, right? Like the interest is growing and you're going to owe more and more, and it's going to catch up with you eventually, even if you can kind of skate by in the short term. And how that debt gets repaid is with your declining health, with your lack of productivity, with low quality of life, all the things we talked about. And of course, fat loss and muscle building getting harder. So all of those things, if you want to be playing the long game with everything, sleep has to be one of the most vital things in your life that you care about and try to improve. So let's talk about how to do that, right? We know sleep is important. You're like, Philip, shut up about it. You're like 24 minutes in and now I'm just like, scared to death that, if I only get 7 hours of sleep, I'm gonna die at 50. All right. So we know it's important for all these things, but let's talk about practical tips. So I've got for you, I was like, should I do the typical, here's 30 things you can do? No, I wanted to skinny the list down to 7, what I think are really important, mostly simple and straightforward actions. Okay. Number 1 is the light exposure. Light is the major environmental cue that sets your circadian rhythm, right? The 24-hour biological clock is our circadian rhythm. It times our sleep, our wakefulness, our cortisol, and blue light in particular, because that's what the sun has, right? Unfortunately, it's also what our screens have, what our iPads, iPhones, computers, everything have. Blue light suppresses melatonin, and that's the hormone that makes you sleepy. So if you want to fall asleep faster, you've got to cut out that blue light as soon as you can before you go to bed, ideally 1 to 2 hours, or you could wear blue light blocking glasses. That's what I do, because I know I just admit that I'm not going to escape blue light. It's in light bulbs. It's in random phone screens. I do like to watch TV at night, relax. The day's over. I don't have energy for anything else. So turn on the Netflix, right? We all do it. It's fine. But now you can wear amber colored blue blocking glasses to block it out. I have a smart bulb next to my bed that I can adjust to an orange hue as well. So, and the other thing you could do is you could either cover your night lights or use like orange colored night lights. You can use a sleep mask. You can make sure that you are fully covered. Light exposure happens not just through your eyes, but through your skin as well. And here's the opposite of that is if you can get some bright light exposure early in the day from the sun, it's going to regulate your circadian rhythm from the front end. And it kind of tells your brain, now it's morning, and sets yourself up for better success later on. So that's light. Light exposure in general, very, very important. Number 2 is a consistent sleep schedule. I've become a huge fan of this one because even those who do get a little bit less sleep than ideal, let's say you get 6.5 hours of sleep every night, which I am prone to do. I have so much that I want to get done in the day, and then I want to spend time with my wife at night, and it's kind of like the schedule works out, and I want to work out in the morning. Could I make a little more drastic changes to get an extra half hour, an extra hour? Of course. But I also know that there are parts of sleep quality that I can improve. And one of those is being consistent. So when I go like 7 nights in a row with the exact same bedtime and wake time and only get an average of 6.5 hours of sleep, I actually, and at risk of violating my own rule, feel pretty good. But I actually feel better, I'll say, in relative terms, than when I don't have a consistent schedule and get the same amount of sleep. That's what I was going to say. So in relative terms, it seems to be a benefit. Because erratic bedtimes and wake times, like number 1 with the light, they confuse that clock inside you, that biological clock, or not biological clock, but the circadian rhythm. And then it makes it harder to fall asleep and wake up because your body's expecting you to go to sleep at this time. And now you're confusing it using a different time. You don't have to be like right on the minute, but within 30 to 60 minute window for waking and sleeping, even on the weekends, your body's going to love that. Try that out, okay? Even if it's the same amount of sleep, try making sure that it is consistent. Number 3 is the classic pre-bed ritual, the winding down ritual, because we all know sleep isn't just a switch. You can't just jump into bed and fall asleep. Now, you might, and maybe that's a sign that you're overly tired to begin with, but there are many things you can do in the hour leading up to bed that can calm you down. I like reading. Okay, I have a Kindle that has the orange spectrum light on it, so I can do like a night light version of it. I wear orange glasses, and I might even turn on the orange light bulb and just read for like 30 minutes. Calms me down, gets me to bed. You might stretch, you might do meditation, you might do breath work, you might just journal before bed. You might take a hot shower or bath, right? Hot, not cold, because hot will cause your body to want to release the heat and it will cool you down. The caveat here is to avoid anything stimulating that revs you up or stresses you out. And of course, movies and TV and video games and all that tend to fall in that category. But even reading could as well, if it's like super stimulating or some traumatic, or true crime or something like that. So just use your judgment. So that's the pre-bed ritual. Number 4 is optimizing your overall environment. And this is just taking the time to look around your room as you listen to this podcast. If you're in your house, if you're not, do it later. And just kind of go through a checklist of things that you could just tweak that are permanent changes in your room for a while. So it needs to be dark, cool, and quiet, right? And by cool, we mean 65 to 68 degrees. And that doesn't always match your thermostat, right? Houses have the way they cool with the fans and the air conditioner and the zones and all that may not exactly match, but it should feel extremely comfortable and cool enough that you want to put at least a sheet on, if not a cover. And then things like blackout curtains. Some people like white noise machines. I prefer just no noise at all, but it's a possibility. Breathable bedding. They do have fancy mattresses that can change their temperature. You can wear a sleep mask, right? All of those things. It's trying to keep electronics and light out, but trying to make it more like a cave when you sleep. So that's number 4. Number 5 is timing your strength training, your exercise, and your food intake to improve your bedtime and your quality. All right. We know that movement is awesome in general, but also for sleep, whether it's training or some form of cardio, walking. It actually is great for sleep, but not too close to bedtime. So we want to avoid like intense workouts 3 to 4 hours before bed. For you nighttime lifters and nighttime exercisers, it behooves you to experiment with moving that up. You don't have to be a 5 a.m. lifter, but moving it up from like 6 or 7 p.m. or if you go after dinner, like that's probably too late for optimal sleep. And moving it up to no later than say 4 p.m. is something worth trying to see if it helps. If you are the type that needs to eat closer to bed, if you want a pre-bed snack, you're eating a lot of calories. Again, the lighter and more digestible it is, as opposed to big and heavy is going to reduce any disruption to your sleep. And then, of course, caffeine is part of this in that most people would be better off not having caffeine any later than, say, 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Some people are like, well, my last cup of coffee is 3 or 4. I would really move it way up and say lunchtime, right? Set for yourself a goal. I'm not even going to have it after. I'm going to have it with lunch at the latest, and that's it. I'm done with coffee. I'm going to move to decaf, soda, whatever, and see if that helps your sleep. I think that covers the training and food. Number 6 is supplementation. It is worth mentioning because some supplements do have some solid evidence behind them for improving sleep quality. Magnesium is my favorite because most people are deficient in magnesium anyway. All right, look for bioavailable forms of magnesium and take them. I used to say with dinner, but I actually like taking them closer to bed, like maybe an hour before bed, just to get the benefit for sleep quality. There are other things that I typically don't even recommend to clients, but you're welcome to research them. Glycine, L-theanine, tart cherry juice, and there's probably other things out there. I'm not a huge fan of supplements in general beyond the basics, filling in the gaps, and I think magnesium is a big one. And then always start low and then assess your individual response. I mean, magnesium is pretty well known. If you're female, probably 300 to 400 milligrams a day. Male, probably 400 to 500 milligrams, and most pills are in that range. Other things like melatonin and CBD oil, and again, I recommend trying to improve everything without going that route if you can. All right. And then once you've exhausted everything, you're like, I still need some other help somehow. You can look into those. Number 7, the last one that I wanted to offer today is, let's say you've gone into bed, you've done all the things, and now your brain is keeping you awake, right? Okay, raise your hand virtually if you know what I'm talking about. It's happened to all of us. It happens to me not that often. I would say maybe once or twice a month. But when it does happen, I know that if I just try to fall asleep, it's not going to happen. It might happen to you in the middle of the night, right? You wake up at like 3, you're still a couple hours away from getting up, and your body's like, I got to go to the bathroom. And you go to the bathroom, you get back to bed, and guess what? You can't fall asleep because now your brain turns on and starts to think about things. I don't know if you relate to this, but I actually will deliberately try to remain in a zombie state. I go, open the toilet, use the bathroom. I come and I actually deliberately try to not think, if that makes any sense to you. And sometimes it works. I try to keep my mind a blank slate. But anyway, that's not my tip for you. My tip is don't simply lie in bed awake for longer than like 20 minutes, right? Don't just toss and turn and get frustrated. Get up. This is fine. Just get up out of bed and do something. Maybe it's a calming activity that gets you sleepy. Maybe it's like cracking open that book again and letting it put you to sleep. Maybe it's writing things down. This helps a lot of people. This has helped me as well. I will, not on your phone. Don't get the blue light going, right? Throw those amber glasses on. Keep the light very low. Don't wake up your spouse or significant other. But just have a notebook next to your bed and just jot down the stuff that's on your mind. You might have some inspirations. You might have some really cool insights. And then you wake up and you say, ooh, I'm actually glad that I couldn't get to sleep because I needed to get this off my mind. Or you say, who the heck wrote that? It's chicken scratch. But either way, it should help you get back to bed because you want to have that association between your bed and sleep, not your bed and not sleeping. Okay. Now, some of these might seem basic. You might have heard them before. It doesn't mean that they're easy to do. I understand. It doesn't mean that they're not important, right? It's usually these unsexy fundamentals that give you the biggest return on investment for your effort. And that's why I included them in here. So just pick 1 or 2, okay? For you overachievers, if you want to go with 2, pick 1 or 2 of these strategies and implement it this week and track how your sleep responds. If you wear an Oura Ring, great, look at the data, but just track a few things. Track when you went to bed, when you got up, and how you felt. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well did I sleep? I've sometimes noticed these things overnight, or I will notice when I'm getting into habits that don't serve my sleep. Like if I do happen to I got to see the rest of that movie before I go to bed, and I just pop on Netflix in the bedroom, which I shouldn't have a TV in the bedroom, right? But I do. So, I got to learn not to do that. So when I do that, I know that when I wake up the next day, I'm not going to feel as well rested. And I know that. And sometimes I make the choice to do it anyway, but that's a poor trade-off for my health. So none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect either. Implement it this week and see how it responds so that you can make that association between the thing and the improvement. And then those are going to snowball over time like any habit. Okay, we covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the science of what happens in your body and in your brain during sleep, how it impacts things like fat loss, building muscle, supporting your health, and then some strategies to upgrade your sleep. So if you take nothing else away from this, I do want you to recognize that sleep is not optional. It is not secondary. It's not like number 6 or 7 on the list, like we often put it. When it comes to nutrition and training, it is equivalent. It's like the third leg of that stool. If I were to make a stool with 3 legs, it would be nutrition, training, sleep. Okay, I know stress is important, but I kind of link stress as a downstream effect of some of these other things. And that'll give you a big return on your efforts, both in the kitchen and in the gym, which is awesome. And then when it's on point, you're going to have more energy, you're going to have motivation, you're going to be able to train hard and recover better. And then you can come back stronger the next session. You have an easier time controlling your appetite and cravings. Emotional eating, anyone? It could be your sleep. You're going to make better food choices. You're going to feel more balanced and capable of tackling the daily challenges in this beautiful journey of fitness and health. Like, it should be fun, and sleep can make it more fun. When you try to skimp on sleep, if you just power through, if you're, drunk on willpower and caffeine, then you're basically playing the game on hard mode, or those of you who are into RPGs like I am, hardcore mode, right? Except if you screw up, you're not just going to die. Apologies. Every aspect of this is harder, as we've said, right? It's less effective. It's less enjoyable. And that is not sustainable. No one has infinite willpower. You're going to break at some point. So for many of you, sleep is the thing. Sleep is the missing ingredient. It's the thing that you're doing that's killing your gains, and improving it will unlock everything. Okay? Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. I want you to get serious about your sleep. Commit to giving your body the rest it needs to repair, to restore, to come back stronger. And I promise you, nothing will be more productive than making that change today. And of course, if you need some more handholding to build this or any other habit, the doors to Wits and Weights Physique University are always open. You get my wonderful, quirky personality there to guide you along the way, as well as many, many other fun activities and ways to learn and grow. And most importantly, you're going to get a personalized nutrition protocol to maximize all of these things. Fat gain, yeah. You're going to come in to build a lot of fat, okay? No. You're going to maximize fat gain, fat loss, I said it again, and muscle gain, and sleep, of course, and many other things. You're going to get customized workout programs every month, weekly live calls and workshops to help fast track all of this and get some individualized coaching, and of course, a community of lots of other ambitious folks who all listen to this podcast as well. And they're going to keep you accountable and on track. Go to witsandweights.com/physique to learn more and enroll. Again, that's witsandweights.com/physique. Thank you as always for joining me today and really nerding out about this stuff. This was kind of a fun topic to research because it's been a while. And I was inspired by one of my clients who asked why all of his efforts. No, here's what he asked. He said, why is my sleep improved so much? So this is an interesting one. Today, we talked about things to do to improve your sleep. He asked, why did his sleep improve so much? And we reverse engineered into all of the things that he's done. He's lost some fat. He's improved his habits. He's improved his consistency, all the things we talk about. And I'm like, that's why your sleep has improved. So the proof is in the pudding. All right. In our next episode, 179, the real reasons your scale weight fluctuates. It's not always fat gain. With Louise Digby, you will learn about all the reasons the scale weight fluctuates, the dangers of scale obsession, and the importance of non-scale victories. We discuss the role of hormones in weight management, the problem with restrictive dieting, and the emotional and psychological side of fat loss and body image, plus lots of tips for sustainable fat loss. Please, the best thing you can do to support me right now is to hit follow in your podcast app, and you'll get notified when that episode comes out and support the show. And if you want bonus points, tell somebody else about the podcast. Just tell somebody, hey, there's this awesome podcast, Wits and Weight. It's for people who are skeptical of the fitness industry, who want to train smarter, not harder. Come on, check it out. As always, stay strong, and I'll talk to you next time here on the Wits and Weights podcast.